All right, good evening, everybody. I have 6:30. Let's call to order the Public Safety Services Delivery Working Group for January 6th, 2025. We have a roll call, please.
Jordan?
I'm here.
Jeffrey?
Here.
Carol?
Here.
Victoria?
Here.
Twyla?
Here.
Tanny?
Here.
Rich?
Here.
Got everybody.
Yay.
All right, and I'm here.
Yay. All right, can I have everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review the minutes from October 28th. Yes.
Yes, Carol, the only thing on the minutes is that under number 8, it says motion. It says Jordan Wittrin moved to adjourn, and it was seconded by Jordan Wittrin.
Well,
you do that?
with that change,
So I was wondering how that works.
Creative.
I'll go back to my notes. I have notes in my office that tell me.
And I
attention to
think it
detail
was- Yeah, I want to say it was either
Didn't notice
Twyla
that.
or it was Tammy, I thought. But
Yeah.
if you could go back and double check that.
Or he's just so good, he can do both.
He could, you never know.
I don't think that's quite.
With that one
Robert's rules,
correction,
but yeah.
I'll go back and review the minutes and make that one correction.
Okay.
Put out the line any voted.
Even though there's a correction, can we leave it on the consent?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
but noting that it is still being voted on, but it's being voted on.
With a correction being noted from
Staff will
the-
change the second.
So with that, I would be open to a motion as a consent agenda with correction.
Yeah, motion to approve the agenda with the motion correction of the minutes. Sorry, thank you.
3.1.
Good catch.
Second, give me a second.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor to approve the 2.1 minutes from October 28th, 2024, and we have a second.
I'll second.
Jeffrey already seconded,
he
and all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope, that carries. Okay, moving right ahead to item number 4, update on police contract negotiations.
One other item on the agenda, Mr. Chair, that I'll discuss before I move into that one is that, as the chair knows, things will change next time we have a meeting. This committee is supposed to be made up of 2 council members, 2 budget committee members, and 3 PSAC members. Well, come next week, PSAC loses Carol Allen because she becomes a council member, and council loses Jordan because Jordan's coming off council. So I've spoken with the mayor, and we're going to probably put on the agenda later this month to discuss how to proceed at this point, because it would make sense for Carol just to move into Jordan's council seat since she worked on this committee for a while. Then the issue is, does the council want to bring in somebody fresh from PSAC who hasn't been involved, or do something else? And so since this is created by council resolution, council can change it. So that'll be so before our next meeting in February, that will be resolved, essentially who's taking Jordan's place on the committee in terms of people. So anyway, just wanted to update everybody on that in case anybody was wondering, well, hold it, Carol can't do both. And she won't. So
Maybe she's that good.
Oh, you never know, I am.
Rich was going to vote, say yes, she is.
No, I was just gonna say.
Whoa, I gave
First
him,
words out of
I
your mouth.
softballed him, and he missed.
Anyway, what I was gonna say is, I like keeping, for continuity's sake, the makeup, right? And so if there's a way of Richard coming in another capacity, I would be favorable to that. Just something to mention to the council.
Right, and that's something for council, that'll be one of the options, because at this point, the staff report, I've come up with 3 options for council. One is, don't change the resolution, have PSAC pick somebody to take the place. Number two, since we're getting into the last 6 months of this process, and council's gonna get it soon anyway, maybe you put a third council member on the committee. Or number four, you simply change it so the seventh person is not a PSAC, but just a citizen. And Jordan takes the spot. So those are the three options.
I would prefer the latter, but I don't know if
I have
Jordan
said all
would be
along that I'm
open to such
okay
an idea.
staying on, but that's gonna be up to somebody else other than me.
Right,
But you're asking him to rewrite the resolution.
yes, for continuity's sake. That's just,
Ultimately, that's up to the council to do what they wanna do, but
yeah, it's just a suggestion.
fine.
I'm just saying, do you know how long we went back and forth about how many members in every committee and all of those things?
I know not what I ask, but
That's true.
Months.
Or you could apply for PSAC and take Carol's spot and then keep Danny happy.
that doesn't open up till
That
May
doesn't
or
open up
whatever, right?
till,
Yeah.
July.
Yeah, the way the process on substitution, but anyway,
I don't know.
yeah, that's something that I'm probably shooting right now for the January 28th meeting to resolve that. And if anybody has any other solutions other than those three, because that's what I'm gonna say, here are the generally suggested ways of handling it, and then council can talk about it, make a decision, and for next meeting, we'll have that seventh person.
Rich, I will take your suggestion, make sure it's heard.
oh, thank you very much. That's twice you've had my back at this meeting. We just got started with this.
Let's just.
No, you can't go home yet. Anyway, okay, moving on to that, police contract negotiations. As everyone is aware, the sheriff's first shot back at us. I gave you all the minutes from March of 2015. And so you're aware that Sheriff Staton made a number of promises that established that base price for Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. Well, not only is Sheriff Staton long gone from the sheriff's job, but the county commission has completely changed since 2015. So politicians, some have a short memory. And so promises made are not just gonna be promises kept at this point, because they're not bound to that. So they put together that from base zero, here's what we think you should be paying based upon what you've been using and to continue the service. So we talked about it before, we talked about it in the contract group, and then Ed and I met on December 20th down at the sheriff's office with John and Steve, who were in their finance office, and they included in that meeting Carlos. Carlos has been the county attorney for law enforcement area for a number of years. In fact, he was at the council meetings back in 2015. He was involved in that contract. So we had Ed, who was involved, and Carlos, who was involved, and public record, but Carlos will agree. Sheriff Staton made a lot of crazy promises. He agrees. Promises that the county probably should not have made. But the whole atmosphere was different back then. They were hurting to find deputies to take open spots, and the council was different, and they were fine with whatever came out of it. He says now the sheriff's office is more, not the sheriff's office, the county commission is more like, we don't want it to look like we're giving subsidies to anybody. Everybody's got to pay full bore on their contracts. So that's the general direction he has. Now, when it gets to the commission, you know, we'll definitely have I'll have a good conversation with our commissioner, Jones Dixon. I've already talked to him about this, and we're gonna have a meeting out. He got sworn in today, Friday? Anyway, he said as soon as he's sworn in, call him and I'll set up a meeting. Because he's gonna be our advocate down at the commission on whatever contract, because just like our council here has to approve the contract, the commission has to approve the contract. So anyway, so we took to them, in your packet, you will see a comparison sheet that looks like this. Put it on here, in your packet. We took what the sheriff's office said we should be paying in the first FTE MCO proposal, and then we have a FTE city proposal. And probably most of you were part of the discussion, but I'm gonna go through the changes and why, just so you know what the changes were. We all agreed that, you know, we've been paying for a full-time chief for the last 9.5 years, we've never gotten a full-time chief. At most, maybe 25% chief. And so what we agreed to do was, let's just pay for a half-time chief and give them a list of duties that this chief shall do. And as long as they're doing all those duties, we'll presume that it's half-time. So we've got a preliminary, I think I sent you all the preliminary list. So we're working on that list now. Then on sergeant, they wanted 3.0, but then we looked at him and says, hold it. Based on the assumption that it takes 5.5 FTE to fill a 24/7, 365-day slot, vacations, holidays, sick time, things like that, that there's one sergeant, 5.5, based upon the fact that we only have 2 districts versus the 8 total, we're only 25%, so we should only be paying roughly 25% of the sergeant cost. So that would be 1.5 roughly. So we said, no, we're only gonna pay 1.5 because that reflects, what portion of the sergeant we're taking care of. The second big change was the district, and if you bounce down to the community resource deputy. As you recall, the contract and the promise from Sheriff Staten in 2015 was that these deputies in our 2 districts, they will only be in the city of Troutdale, just like our officers were, and they'll only leave for mutual aid or emergencies. There's a shootout in Gresham. Yeah, sure, everybody needs to, all hands on deck. Well, nobody told 911. Nobody followed up who was in the negotiation to find out if that got followed through. And so when we, as you know, when we checked with the 911, they said 1/3 of the time, our deputies are out on regular calls somewhere else. So if there's a call in unincorporated Multnomah County, the closest deputy is, say, District 70, which is up on the hill, but they'll send the District 70 deputy from Troutdale out to cover the call somewhere else. So we said, well, hold it. Let's do this. We only want 1 district. We'll have 1 deputy on 24/7 covering the city, and every once in a while they'll make them out on regular calls, whatever. But we also know that there's a Gorge deputy that's available, there's a Fairview Wood Village deputy available, there's a sergeant available, so there's plenty of backup to that 1 deputy. And then instead of having 1.5, we want 3 community resource deputies. That way we can take those 40 hours a week and do an overlapping schedule so that pretty much 7 days a week, we'll have somebody on between 7 and 10 o'clock every day as a second deputy, sometimes overlapping, because sometimes, especially for traffic stuff, it's nice having 2 to work together, to have one being bird dog and the other one pulling people over. So we'll kind of have that coverage, so we'll have them, and they will just be only allowed to be on calls in the city unless there's a mutual aid emergency somewhere else. And so we went back to them with that. So that saved us, instead of 11, that knocked us down to 8.5 for our general deputy coverage. Then on detectives, they said, oh, well, heck, we want you to pay for 3 detectives because you guys are taking, I think they have 11 or 12 detectives. You're taking over 25% of our cases, so you have to pay that 25%. Again, with detectives, though, well, what kind of cases are we taking? Do we really know? If you just look at volume, maybe sure. But are all our cases for the detectives shoplifting and assault 4s, and the other ones in the other parts of the county are all assault 2s, murders, kidnappings? Those take a lot of different level of concern. So what we did, we went back and I looked at all of the new cases assigned to deputies for the last 9 years. Back in 2015, the first year of the contract, there was 137 new cases assigned to deputies. And then for the next 8 years, it's varied between 200 down to 75, up to 150, back down again. This last year, 2023, it was 134. So after 9 years, it's the same level of new cases assigned to deputies. So why we want more? So the response back to them was, all right, we'll go up. We'll go up to 2 though. And if the the detectives determine they're overloaded, well, then some cases in Troutdale won't get investigated. They just won't. Let them make that call. But we're only going to pay for 2. I surmise that the cases will still be active, but maybe a patrol deputy does the investigation. Who knows? But we're only going to pay for 2 there. They went down and administrative assistant, they have us paying for 1 FTE. The administrative assistant that we had that we thought we were paying for, no more than 10% of the time on Troutdale work. They were primarily the administrative assistant for the whole patrol division, because we didn't have to have them do that much. And so we said, all right, like with the chief, we will give them a list of duties. I mean, a lot of the stuff they do is like, they're supposed to be coordinating all the PSAC stuff. we haven't had an administrative assistant for 2.5 years, literally, covering this spot. And so staff and our chief have been taking care of PSAC. Well, they're supposed to be doing the minutes, the agenda, covering all that stuff. They're supposed to be doing background checks for all the new businesses that come into town when we have to do a background check on a new business. So, but other than that, there's not much for them to do. So we're saying, we'll pay for 2.5, and we'll give them a list of duties that we wanted to do on that one. Then on records tech and for record supervisor, they took us, they wanted to double it for us. And they said, well, because the volume of records that come in. But again, they agree, but we don't know how much time each of your records compares to Wood Village, Fairview, or the unincorporated parts of Multnomah County. So we said, no, we only think we should be paying for 2. So I think right now in our contract, gosh, I don't have it in front of me, but I think we're only paying for 1 in the current contract.
I believe so.
Yeah, so we're gonna double it. And then, of course, the 1 supervisor, I think that was the same. So that's how we cut everything down. We use their same numbers for the, obviously the price per FTE. And then, so we figured it out that it's so about 3.7 million, slightly less than we're paying now. Now they have these administrative costs, fleet costs and things like that. They have to recalculate those because we're having fewer FTE. So those should be lower, but for the purposes of argument, we continue to use those numbers. And it worked out that we should owe them $4.5 million. However, as we've talked about before, the citizens of Troutdale already pay for the sheriff's law enforcement services. So we're already entitled to some certain base level of service. So we shouldn't be paying from $0 for our law enforcement coverage in the city of Troutdale because we're already owed something from the sheriff's office. And so we looked at the $190 million sheriff's law enforcement budget and looked at population numbers and says of the income in the general fund in Multnomah County, of that budget, Troutdale is contributing already $1.3 million toward the sheriff's patrol division. So we want that as a baseline credit because we're already paying for something from the sheriff's office and we should have that off the bill. So we went back at 3.2. They kind of take it, they're going to play with it. It was Christmas time, they won't get back to us for another sometime middle of January, they said. So we went back to them with that. Now, I will tell you, the bigger part of the discussion toward the end was about whether either one of us want to continue this relationship farther down the road than just 3 or 4 years until Troutdale has another alternative. Because they're not sure, based upon the commission's attitude, that they even want to get involved in this contract stuff anyway. And I think part of it is the commission historically has not valued the law enforcement services in Multnomah County. They're always fighting for their budget down there. They're always spending money on frivolous, cute little projects. I've gone through the Multnomah County budget, and I look at stuff they're spending millions on, and going, really? That's a core service of our county when sheriff's office is not getting the money they need? It's crazy. Anyway, so we talked about that maybe everybody's better off if we have another alternative. Now, that for the next couple of years, we won't be able to come up with an option, so we're still going to argue about the price for the new contract, but we're going to have a shorter contract probably, and ones where we can get out if we do something else. The options for doing something else, as you've seen before, we've already done a study on what it would cost to recreate the Troutdale Police Department, which would be about $6 million a year to operate it, which is obviously less than the 7.8 they want now, even though it's more than the $4 million we're paying now. But we'd also need $2 to $3 million for capital costs. Cars, computers, desks, chairs, all the things you have to do to outfit, and to pay for hire chief early, then he has to start hiring people, and you have to do all this stuff to get it set up before you start your annual budget. So we have those numbers to look at. Along with that, option 2 is to, so we'd have to have a bond levy for the citizens to approve the $2 or $3 million. Your citizens in this city, obviously, that's why you're here. I think that's not a bad ask of our citizens to get your police department back. It may cost you something, but they tell me they don't see them in the neighborhoods anymore. We've got the GPS data that says, yeah, they barely ever leave the main streets to go into the neighborhoods just to drive around. And we would have control. I would just generally just say, all the deputies we deal with, the actual deputies, sergeants, captains, they're all wonderful to deal with. However, they are operating under a policy and procedure manual that's written by people at 5th and Hawthorne, who I will just tell you seem to have a different worldview than people in East County. It's the nicest way I can put it. And so there's having control of our own police department and policies and procedures would be a benefit to our citizens a lot. So that's one option. Along with that option is number two, we talk to the other two cities and say, how would you like to contract with us for police services? And looking at numbers, you'd probably have to hire just one extra FTE, 365, 7 days a week. That'd be 5.5 or so FTEs. And then you're bringing up the cost to operate a police department probably close to $7 to $7.5 million. The three cities currently are paying $7 million together. So it's like, it's hardly much more for us to have a police department add an extra shift to cover those two cities. Again, you just need still one, either way, you need just one sergeant, 24/7, 365. So one of the problems we had before in 2015, as many of you know, is that the pay scale for Multnomah County, Gresham, Portland was all about 10 grand a year higher than the city of Troutdale officers. That was one of their motivating factors to say, yeah, we want to go there, more opportunity and more money. But there was a lot of Troutdale officers would tell you, you know, if we were going to get paid the same, we just didn't stay with Troutdale. They had less politics to deal with over here. So the study we did, almost $6 million a year for a police department, included salaries that were the same as all our competitors. It's the same thing we do with city staff. I can't look at similar cities to Troutdale, like say Newport, Prineville, Pendleton, and say, well, they're similar sized cities, we'll pay what they pay. No, they're not my competition for employees. My competition is Lake Oswego, West Lynn, Portland, Gresham. So we have to have salaries to compete with them. Same thing with our Troutdale Police Department, would have to compete with them. So that's the second option, is to do it, ask the citizens they want to do it, and then talk to our neighboring cities. The third option is to do a special district. Like we've talked about doing a fire district, you do a police district. So all three cities are in a police district. It becomes a separate taxing entity, a separate board, and it's operated differently. That's an option. So those are the things that the new council is going to have to talk about in the next year or two and see if what the citizens want to have a shot at. So right now, that's the offer we made back to them. We want to pay less than we're paying now, and we want this level of service and this kind of patrol. And we're waiting for the next couple of weeks. So before the February meeting, I'll better know what their response is to it. So, questions, comments, concerns?
Well, if we're talking bonds and levies, and probably be the same time we're looking to do a fire district in 2028, which would be a lot to swallow for this city.
Yep.
For sure. But yes, I think regardless, we want a smaller contract time no matter what, whether that's 5 years or something we both have what we on our own, but not 10 years for sure.
But like I said, it was clear from them in the room that they would not be bothered by Troutdale in its own direction. Because I think they're just seeing that problem with the commission right now. It isn't keen on this as a value.
I may have a different opinion of other people, but the police district, for me to swallow, it's not hard for me to swallow, but just keeping, it'd be easier for our budget in Troutdale, it would be easier to a separate entity taking care of that, always putting resources back into it, so.
Yeah, and for years, Wood Village has always contracted for police services. Fairview used to have their own police department, but you would think that they might feel better, at least if Troutdale's running the police department, we feel better about partnering with them.
Yes, we communicate a lot better.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Sure, thanks. Couple things. I understand your point, but I think that if we're gonna do a police and fire district, we're gonna put taxes into serious compression. And we need to keep that into account, because that would have a pretty big effect on things.
We'll talk about compression when we're talking about fire. Got some information.
Okay. I mean, it would just affect a lot of things other than those. And not to mention, you're asking like over $1,000 from every resident, practically.
Just so everybody understands what compression means is, because of Measure 5 and 50, the maximum per 1,000 that can be charged for governmental services is $10 per 1,000. Right now, almost nobody in Troutdale is in compression at all. We're below that. But if government services, a police district, City of Troutdale, Multnomah County, Metro, all of those taxes add up to $11, you don't get taxed the $11, you still get you get taxed the $10. And so what they do is then they cut 10% away from all of those entities. So they compress our revenues if we go above that $10. So we have to share whatever that cut means for everybody if you go above the $10. So there is a loss if we go too high with our property taxes. Most areas in Portland are already in compression. Anyway, so I'll talk about them next. I have numbers actually.
Some pretty seriously.
Yeah.
Question, why would we go from 2 patrols to 1.5? Because if we have a deputy 24/7, that's basically 5.5 FTE, right? So if we had 2, that'd be 11. Am I right?
Correct.
And so we're going 8.5, so why aren't we going 11? I didn't understand that.
Oh, because currently we're paying for 2 deputies in 2 districts that are being called out of the city to other calls a third of the time anyway. And so we're subsidizing by 1/3 the county because our deputies are responding, that we're paying for responding to calls outside of here 1/3 of the time. So let's reduce that by getting rid of one of them, so we only have 1 deputy being gone 1/3 of the time, covering the city. It's an issue of, do we need, if we have a sergeant full-time and we have community resource deputies that will cover, say, 16 hours of the day, 7 days a week, do we really need that second car on the road in the city for those additional time when they already know that they're backed up by the Gorge and Fairview Wood Village deputies? So it's like, it's a way of saving money.
One district.
But that's kind of like saying that we know what we're doing now isn't working, but what we're saying is, well, it's been happening, so we're gonna continue with it, almost.
No, the difference is, we're saying, we do want to have a background coverage 24/7 out here that's backed up by other deputies in other places and sergeants.
But 1 instead of 2.
Right, but we want to offset that by having not 1.5 resource deputies, but 3 resource deputies who will be always in the city, and we can control what their assignments are. So,
Right.
so we're giving up a little bit to get more control and keeping them in the city.
You're keeping them in the city, but we're still not like 2 officers in the city all the time, which was a model we were trying to be at.
Right, right. What it means is you'll have
1.5.
Yeah, but you'll have 2 officers in this, well, okay, and this is the other thing. It's hard to know if this even matters, if you think about it, because one is, if there's a call in the city of Troutdale, now, and there's 2 deputies in 2 different districts, they'll get calls to those. But if somebody is on a call already, then it'll be the second deputy that will be called to answer the call in Troutdale. If we go to 1 full-time deputy 24/7, if it's during the 16 hours that we have a resource deputy, the resource deputy will back them up and be there. However, if it's in the middle of the night, 2 in the morning, where our 1 deputy at that time, let's just say that's our 1 deputy, is on a call, and there's a second call in Troutdale, there's a Fairview Wood Village deputy, or there's a Gorge deputy who can respond to the call.
No,
And there's this whole building full of deputies that are nearby too. So with those, I will just say, I have reason to believe that if we cut down on this, we'll get the same service.
I get that.
I'm just saying,
I'm just thinking, okay, if you've got 1 patrol district
Yeah.
and 2 deputies, right? And 1 guy is writing tickets, maybe the other guy could be going through the neighborhoods or doing whatever, which is what we're all looking for.
That's what the resource deputies are for. That's why we want resource deputies, because they will do the local policing.
Right, but you don't have 2 people, it's 1.5 at the end of the day. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I get it, but it's more like 1 2/3 in terms of time. But yeah, I get what you're saying, because instead of 168 hours a week, it's 120 hours a week.
Right.
So that's the trade-off we're doing.
So I mean, we can't go out and tell the citizens there's gonna be 2 people on patrol, because there won't be.
24/7.
Yeah, there won't be.
Right. Correct.
And then, another thing, I know that Staten was in the past and all of that, but it's kind of like he was representing the sheriff's department and representing the county and made promises to the citizens of Troutdale in a public meeting on the record, and multi-million-dollar decisions were made based on the statements that he said. I'm just wondering why they can't be held accountable somehow for that.
They'll say, where is it written in the contract that we have to provide these free things? I mean, definitely the commission's gonna know about it. We're gonna tell Jones-Dixon, I told them that at the meeting. We gave up our police department based upon these promises. It's what the law is called detrimental reliance. We relied upon these oral promises and we made decisions against our interest, getting rid of the police department, for it. We've told them that, and that's one of the big arguments is chill out, guys. You've made all these promises, we made decisions based on these promises, and now you're going to back out on us? Legally, it's hard to enforce it. Politically, that's where we're gonna put pressure on it. Because we have the transcripts, I've given them to you all, you can read through all the promises that were made, so,
There was a lot.
yeah, there was. Crazy. So it just, and your new mayor looked at him right in the face and says, hold it. We currently have 28 FTE in our police department. We're gonna be paying now under your contract 16.5. So we're gonna go from 28 to 16.5, and you're gonna give us better service and better coverage. Oh yes, because we're gonna give you all this free stuff, is what Staten said, essentially, in those meetings. And for a while we did, but now they're going up, new king, new commission, new sheriff, and do it anymore. So I said, we want our police department back, and would you restore it back to where it was? Nope, that didn't work.
Good?
For the moment.
Okay. I will just comment, as it's my last meeting probably, I'm gonna chime in as well. So is there no legal, I know it's a stretch, but to sue and ask for monetary value back to the city
Yeah.
to reconstitute our police force? I mean, is that one option that we can?
You have to ask Ed that.
Okay.
That's an interesting legal theory,
Mhm.
and,
You didn't hold up your promises, that granted was verbal, but we could document and,
yeah, generally, documented contracts, you have to look within what's called the four corners of the document. If it's outside the four corners of the document, you're screwed. Unless there are certain exceptions to that. One of them is detrimental reliance, which is based upon those promises you made that didn't make it into the contract. I made all these decisions based upon those promises being true.
yeah.
And the court said, well, yeah, you did make decisions based upon all those promises, and now they're reneging on it. Because you look back at the contract, we were getting all those. So even though they didn't say they were gonna promise to do those things, is obviously the FTE number we were paying for reflected that we were getting all of those extra things. Because I've gone through and I've looked at all the criminal numbers for the last 9.5 years. Overall, on average, there really hasn't been an increase in crime and tickets and calls. I mean, the call volume, the last year, the Troutdale Police Department was like 10,200 calls. The call volume to Multnomah County in 2023 was 9,600. Now, it's gone up as high as 12, down to lower nines. I mean, it does this, but before the first year and now this last year, it's the same. So why are we paying more for not showing any real need? So yeah, those are arguments to be made, and that's more likely gonna have to be made at the commission level.
And then I'll just make one comment, as Kenny was pointing out, 2 versus having 1.67. But would we rather have 2 on the streets, or would we have 1.67 and we have more autonomy about where they go, what they do, and have more say because they're a resource officer versus a patrol deputy that we're gonna have less leadership over, guidance over. So just a little thought to put in the back of your room. And we'll get to this side of the room for comments. Rich?
This is probably gonna come as a shock, but strong law enforcement supporter. And I like what you've done here, the work you've done, the letter, it's well done. I looked at this as from a negotiating standpoint of what are we actually likely to get and how do we best utilize the system we're in, right? You're making a high analytical proud. And then I kind of took notice to what you were saying about what the possibilities are for the future. And I am aware that how much we value law enforcement here in East County is very different than the way it is in Monoma County. I wondered, out of this building here, we service the 3 cities right now and then some, right? Now, if we were to use the same building, which I would expect for a Troutdale law enforcement,
Because it's a big enough
Presence.
building capacity to handle all the deputies for the whole county.
yeah, that's what I wonder, is if we have that, if we have extra capacity that also allows Monoma County to have an eastern presence, that there might be a combination of that,
Yeah.
where they have a presence to help them respond to various county, like,
Precinct,
Going out.
have a precinct here.
right. Keep overall costs down and service the citizenry. So I wanted that to be in the back of your mind. I liked Councilor Richard's suggestions about, how do we best resource these officers. And what's important to me is that if an officer is in need, if they're taking a dangerous call, I want them to be able to get backup right away. I don't want to risk our officers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we got to think about that in the equation and how we do that and what that response time looks like.
Yeah, Tanny's obviously around the numbers, but what we tried to create with you and with the bargaining committee was reducing the number, but hopefully in some ways increasing the quality of the service that we're getting. So yeah, again, it looks like a reduction, but I think the citizens will experience what will feel like more police coverage.
Right, and to Tanny's point is, in the long run, we do want to see better law enforcement coverage within Troutdale. I think that's what our citizens want. That's the way I've been reading the room. Not just this room, I mean the city, right? So I would have to agree with what Tanny was saying as well.
Quite a bit to chew on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think what you brought up is a great idea. I think part of the reason our citizens do feel safe is we see these sheriff's deputies, and they may be leaving the city, but they have that visual presence. So if there is a way in the future to keep that idea, having a precinct out here, just having that visual reminder that they are here, even though we have our own force, I think could really help. Because I think if we moved completely to just having our own force, and we have very few, move to like 5 people out here,
Yeah.
that visual, it's gonna feel like we're having a reduction in service, even though we are not, just because we're gonna see so few people.
Yeah, and I will also say, one of the other advantages that they sold us on, not only the full-time sergeant to back up things, and was the building being open 24/7. Well, for the last year and a half, it hasn't been. It's been 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Because,
It's been almost
3 years?
Yeah.
It's because their HR department has not done a very good job of keeping vacancies filled over there. And so they don't have the manpower to staff the records office, so they'll keep it open. So that advantage, you'll be open 24/7. Well, that hasn't happened, like I said, for 3 years.
And as a community member, I know this is supposed to be one of those safe locations you can come if you're buying something off the internet and things like that. And so knowing that it's not open when some of those might be taking place, that is worrisome.
Yeah. Come in the lobby, have it open. So, and that's something in terms of if we have our own police department, we have to look at staffing levels, and we want to add extra staffing to make sure it is open 24/7. It's some little cost, but maybe something the citizens want to have. So, that's where police is, so I'll know something by February.
before we move off police, Victoria, anything?
No.
I just want to make sure that we're covered and people are seeing that we're covered. Because when I talked to a couple of businesses in town in the last couple of weeks, and they're not seeing police at all, and there was a break-in in one of the buildings, and he was told they weren't even gonna investigate it, they got the person on film, and nothing's gonna be done, so my concern is, why are we being neglected? And not keeping our businesses safe, and if people are realizing that they're not being safe, then they're gonna not feel safe, and so how do we cover that and make sure that people are feeling safe?
And what I tell people, I've told several citizens, is to say, if something like that happens, call me immediately. Send me a detailed email of date and time and location and what happened and what they did when they called. If there's a situation sometimes where people call 911 and they're treated poorly, I had that happen a couple of years ago. I got a hold of the director of 911 and they pull up the tapes and they will review them to see if the 911 operator was rude or wrong or should have dispatched somebody. That's been the problem we've had for years though in dispatch, is that 911 dispatch sometimes acts like they're dispatching based upon the rules set by the city of Portland. Which Portland said, for anything that's a misdemeanor, we're not gonna send them. In Troutdale, no, we want them sent. And the sheriff's office has told them that. They just haven't picked up doing that as well. As, you know, we want a response. That's why we pay for these deputies out here, to be close by so they can respond.
Well, I did remind them to call you.
Yeah, okay, good. They didn't, but that's the best you can do. And I'm happy, you know me, I'm happy to send an email off and rattle a few trees, say, what happened here? So,
And just going off what Carol was saying and Rich, and just the perception piece, if we do go back to the Troutdale police force and we have a reduction and see less officers, I keep thinking back to a few years back where Troutdale was the city known for, you're gonna get a ticket at the speed. And it kept a certain element out of the city, my perception. And now that we've gone a little lax, if the criminal element out there sees that there's less police presence out in Troutdale, what are we going to help invite? I don't know. We're gonna look like easier prey out there, so.
I was texting with our resource deputy, Nick, in that he asked to spend a little overtime tonight doing traffic down near Sam Jack sector road, Jackson Park Road, yeah, down by the Glenado Park, and so I was just asking him how to go. He says, I pulled over several speeders, but there wasn't a lot of speeders tonight. He gave a few tickets down there. But see, all right, squirrel, side note, one of the problems we've had with traffic enforcement in Troutdale is that the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office has a supply of radar that suck. Most of them are broken and don't work, and they don't replace them, because traffic has never been a value in the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. And it's not good or bad, it's a value they've had for decades. And so nobody really cared about keeping up to date on new radars. So I started complaining about this when our research deputy says, yeah, I'd love to radar, but my radar's broken. Last fall, it's arriving, he said, on Friday, his new radar unit. Woohoo. So that makes it easier. If you have crappy equipment, who wants to use crappy equipment for a job? It's like, oh, it works half the time, so why do I bother doing traffic? So that's one of the struggles that we work with. And if you don't control, I can't make their acquisition people buy stuff. I just have to say, please. So anyway, good to know.
I think Councillor Wittrin has a good point there. You want the word on the street to be that Troutdale isn't the place where you want to do crime at the various levels.
Yep.
That it does
Absolutely.
get followed up on.
And part of that is I'm seeing cops pull people over.
Yeah, I was more referring to like break-ins and that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, broken window, you chase everything.
Yeah, for one minute. I just wanna make sure you have an opportunity before we move on.
You don't have to. You think about it, all I want to think, we have a new chief.
Yep.
Robert Stewart, and I've had 2 homeless campers downtown on benches or in doorways of businesses in the last week and a half, and within an hour, he's had somebody there to deal with it. So that's good. So if you see anybody down, campers, homeless, let me know. And these people are people who you can offer them all the services in the world and they refuse. So, Did I give you enough time?
Yeah, I don't know, it's a very frustrating process. I think that I mean, personally, we need police presence. We need police presence within our neighborhoods, so people have perception and people see people driving through. Again, I'll go back to before 2015, like, I had a police officer knock on my door twice in the middle of the night to say my garage door was open. Now, when you're in your 20s or maybe like you think that's annoying probably, but as I've gotten older, I come to appreciate that, and that's kind of probably what the community, that's how I perceive what the community wants, is that right there. Now, that being said, I think a lot of things that you said tonight are, I think, slightly disconcerting as to continuing to have a move forward with the county as our law enforcement, and being confident that like our law enforcement is going to protect us. And multiple times, Tammy's been frustrated with like people driving by his house fast and not getting a response. Someone breaking in and they're being like, yeah, okay, like that. We don't want that to be okay. It's like we want to know that this is not a place to do that. If you drive through and you speed, you get a ticket. Best way I can think to do that is to reclaim our own police department and move towards that. And I think having a long-term possibility contract with the county is going to be important to get the most of our buck, most bang for your buck. And I think what you have on that paper and what we've talked about is would be good for the city monetary wise, but I don't think it would be good for the city perception wise. After this conversation tonight, I just can't wrap my head around being like, I want to sell this to you, you're gonna be safe, it's gonna be better, there's accountability in the contract, etc. But I just keep coming back to that little voice in the back of my head that says like, this isn't gonna work. But I do, like we've talked about, I am extremely concerned about asking for more money on top of asking for more money in terms of a possible fire district, asking for a bond or a levy to start up the police department. I think that's a lot for people to grasp. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think this group probably generally wouldn't have a problem voting yes for something like that, but
Can you get enough yeses?
you need, yeah, you know what I mean? Like I have a really hard time seeing, that's why I think a possibility of a long-term contract, a 10-year contract, I think we need, but there's opt-outs at every year. That is cost effective because you're not getting what we want. We're not gonna pay more for less. But I think that I have not gotten on the train where I think we need to do our own police department again until right now. I think that's the train I'm on. That we need to move towards that. All the rest of this, we can do this and hopefully we can hammer out something, but our focus needs to be moving towards this, where we can have, say, we can lay down what we want from our police department for our citizens. I don't want to waste anybody else's time trying to figure do something like that. I think that all the conversation leads right towards that.
I would just say, you were saying, agree with you. I do really appreciate the point that Ray's put in there with another resource officer, so we can have that control, be in the neighborhoods, tell them what we want, rather than just having a patrol deputy and county sheriff is making the decision. So having the resource officer is great, but I also think we need to I agree with you too, we need to get off the cycle of fire and police being at the same time, same contracts, it's a lot for our community, city to swallow when it comes to dollars. And if we do something, and just talking out loud, if we do something in 2028 with fire, then what does that mean? Police isn't until 2030, 2032? I don't know. you know, in order to get it palatable to the public, to spend money.
The comments I'm hearing from this group are, they're right on. These all very valid.
Kenny?
I would say, back to the resource officer thing, I don't care if the resource officer, whether they're, I don't know, crosswalk monitors or whatever they are, I think we need to have two of them here all the time. Because you were talking about how backup and, you know, safety and things. If you've got one officer dedicated to the city and something big happens, you're counting on people coming from other places.
Yeah, the question is, how do you get that in our current framework? I don't know how we get that.
In some ways, you gotta remember, we may have that situation going on now anyway. One of our deputies is called off to a call somewhere else in the county, and they're not even here, because they've been pulled out of the city. So we only have one on the road anyway.
Right.
One third of the
So-
time, we only have one on the road
Right.
anyway.
And I agree with you, so we see that, but it's kind of like we know that that's not what we want.
Right.
So I'm just saying, why don't we ask for something closer to what we want?
But would you rather have, and asking questions, you personally, would you rather have a deputy from 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and then another patrol deputy here 24/7, but from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., we, the city, can tell them where to go, what to do, what our priorities are, what our initiatives are? Or would you rather have 2 patrol deputies from Multnomah County 24/7, and you have no say?
I'm not talking about the patrol deputy versus the resource officer. I'm talking about however you have to do it, you have two people here all the time. So maybe you got 18 resource officers and one deputy.
Well, remember, we don't have two people here all the time.
Yeah, so I'd have
That's
to
the
agree
problem.
with Tanny that that's the goal.
Yeah.
We just don't know how to get there in our current
At
situation.
a price we can afford.
Right.
Right.
Now, the other thing I would say is the contracts, it's hard for anybody to accept it, but I think there's actually an advantage to everything being done at the same time. Because I think if you go out for police and then you go out for fire, I think then the next thing that's gonna happen is gonna be a recall. I don't know that people are gonna vote for something for police and then turn around and vote for something for fire later. I just don't see it. I think you'd be better served to just say, this is what we need to do public safety, you know, and emergency services, here it is. I mean, it's a big nugget, but at least you only have to go out once. It's really expensive and really iffy to go out for a bond. I mean, I'd rather just go out hard one
Time
time.
we go out for a bond, for the police bond, that's a one-time deal. And I think, I just like, something Ray said, like, just really like eats at me now, and it kind of pisses me off a little bit. Maybe I'm just because I'm sitting close to Tanny, but how can how can the county say, like, they are fine with us to go because they don't prioritize it. They're not prioritizing public safety. Yet they go and spend gajillions of dollars on homelessness.
Mhm.
And you can't say that, you just say like, they don't want to give any handouts. That's all homeless is handouts from us supplementing that. And for them to say or to hint at that we don't want to make sure that your city is safe, we're not gonna give you anything, even though these promises were made, we realized that they were it was just set hearsay, it's not on a contract. It's really frustrating because we gave up the control of our police department at that time, based on those things. And then to not back that up with like, okay, like the county you are part of this county, we're part of that. I just think at this point, like, I would rather move towards creating our own, knowing that we have control of it, we can determine what is safe and effective for us, and we don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah, because the sad thing is that decisions are being made or have been made over the last few years that have made our citizens and our law enforcement less safe. I mean, I can't imagine how you can make it more difficult for them.
But if you think about, we're going into this and the county's saying, we don't care if you guys stay or you go, and this is a low priority for us, that's a recipe for disaster right there. I mean, we're coming from two different places.
Right.
But, you know, coulda, shoulda, woulda, he's sitting there going, I told you to back in 2015, right, Rich? But, and the mistake, I'll say, the biggest mistake made back in 2015 was, and I was suggesting some of the minutes, is asking the citizens. Hillsborough only has a fire department because the citizens want to pay extra for it. Gresham citizens just approved their fire and police safety bond, 5-year levy, because they wanted to pay for their own and keep it. Troutdale citizens were never asked, hey, would you pay more to keep your police department?
Well, there's been plenty of bad decisions all the way around at all levels through the last few years. Our people are paying for it.
We're kind of overlapping here, but let's move into fire.
Okay.
If everybody's good.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, fire, as I've discussed with you before, we have a very similar situation in some ways, philosophically. We have the numbers for the last 30 years on what we have paid for fire with our contracts with the city of Gresham. And we've taken the exact numbers for the last 20 years, charted them out. Seth, the finance director at Wood Village, has been great at doing this stuff. The city of Troutdale, Wood Village, and Fairview have generally only paid anywhere between 53% to 78% as much as a Gresham resident pays for fire service. So we've always paid some percentage less per capita. Because one of the reasons was, I've talked to the guy who was one of the big negotiators in 2015, is that we were only supposed to be paying for that which we added to the Gresham Fire Department, what more they needed to add to cover us. Such as they had a fire chief. They're still gonna have a fire chief even if they don't cover fire coverage out here. So we shouldn't be paying for a portion of the fire chief in their budget. They already have a station at 195th and Halsey. We shouldn't be paying for the cost of maintaining that station and the people there because they didn't change that. They added one station in Troutdale at Terry Park. That's all they added. And so that's one of the reasons they were paying us. Second of all, as you all know, we have no control. We're just a customer. We have no control over who the chief is, what their budget is, anything like that at all. And finally, the statistics, again, computers and statistics and everything is great these days. The three cities get probably 40 to 45 seconds slower response to all calls than citizens of Gresham do. So, despite all of that, some uninformed Gresham council members, and I won't name their names, but some of them are uninformed, are still saying, those three cities should be paying the exact same per capita cost that Gresham residents pay. When for 30 years, and logically, no, we shouldn't be. And so they started off offering us to say, we want you to pay the same amount, which is what they did. They took the current contract and our assessed value in the city of Troutdale. We have like $1.9 billion of assessed value in Troutdale. And they tried to balance everything and make it so all four cities are paying the exact per thousand rate, reduced to what it looked like in terms of a bill to Troutdale for it. I think I gave you that letter from Gresham last time. You've gotten that letter from Gresham where they laid that out and said that. So the three cities have been talking, the three city managers, and none of these things are offers, by the way, because no staff has the ability to make a binding offer. We have to try to work to the best that we can and still convince the leadership, like we talked about with the county commission on the police contract. Gresham and the other three cities still have to convince their council members to agree to whatever the staff has been working on. So we told the city of Gresham that made no sense based upon history and facts. And so we went back to the drawing board, and I'll just tell you, I thought probably our response is probably more generous. You have our response in your packets for tonight. A lot of cities in the state of Oregon have asked their citizens to either do a local option levy, which is for 5 years, to help pay for extra services, or they charge people a utility fee. The city of Gresham, because of their fire and police costs, They have asked, they've been charging their citizens $15 every month on their utility bills, to raise more money. And they got them to approve a 5-year bond levy, which adds $1.35 to their per thousand property tax rate. So the citizens so the argument that we kind of talked to is the citizens of Gresham have increased their financial burden to keep a fire and police department going over there. What has Troutdale done to increase their burden on the citizens? Nothing, not a criticism, but we just haven't done anything. So we talked about, well, how can we acknowledge that, but not be paying the same per head, because that wouldn't be fair. So what we did was we took the offer that you see in your packet tonight was based upon, all right, Troutdale, our base rate this year is $2.7 million. Last June, May, the citizens of Gresham passed a bond levy to increase their burden for their fire and police department. The burden on the fire, enhanced burden on the fire department, if you take their $1.35, 59 cents, it's in the paperwork, 59 cents of that was going to their fire department. So the Gresham citizens are paying 59 cents more per thousand for their fire department. So we said, all right, let's take our base rate of 2.7, let's take our $1.9 billion. What would we be burdening ourselves the same way? So let's just say we burden ourselves the same 0.59 that City of Gresham did. It came up to a number really close to the 4.3 they wanted per capita. In the chart, you'll see that attached here. But we also said, hold it, we can't assume that $1.6 million for Troutdale increase in 1 year, and we're not gonna pay the same amount that you guys do because it's not fair for us to pay the same rate. So let's do this. We said, let's do a 3-year phase-in period. So as you'll see in that letter, the first year would go from 2.7 to 2.8, still a huge increase. The third year, it would go to 3.8. And then the fourth year, we'd be up to the third year, we'd be up to 4.3, which is what they want now. But because it's in 3 years with inflation, that actually makes it equivalent of, roughly, you gotta figure what, $250,000, $300,000 less. So we're still paying less per capita than the citizens of Gresham are, it's more. So that's what we made back to them. They haven't really analyzed it, looked at it yet, but the city manager said, I still don't like the 3-year phase-in, because he's under direction to try to get, per capita, apparently, is what some of their uninformed council members have said. So that's something that is gonna have to be advertised to them. They have to understand why we're not paying the same as Gresham residents, and it's not unreasonable. That's where we're at. We're waiting for Gresham also to get back to us based on what we told them. My initial feeling is I wouldn't give any more than this. I just think it's unreasonable. It's a large increase. Things do cost more these days, but we got to stay away from that equal pay because we're not getting equal fire service for a number of reasons.
We wouldn't say that for a while.
Right, and I don't know they thought of it that much. Along with that, I'm going to report also, along with that whole issue, I have a draft of our Tiberius financial analysis on a fire department on what it would cost for a fire district. This is a draft report, so it's not finalized yet. As soon as I get a final, you'll get it, all right? It essentially says that compression issue we talked about would have almost no impact on the citizens of Troutdale. If we had a fire district, it was $2.50 a thousand, and we added that to the governmental services at up to 10, almost nobody in Troutdale would have a compression on their property tax issue. Of the $7 million we currently collect for property taxes, compression would take away $150,000 a year. Literally almost nothing. And we would save $2.7 million in our general fund budget for the fire department. So it would be de minimis impact compression on us. So that was nice. Gresham is doing this study. It's the same study, but there's 3 studies tailored for each of the 3 cities to say that kind of stuff. What would be the impact of a fire district? Gresham is getting their own study from a separate company. They're supposed to have it any day now too. So, because they've been thinking that compression is going to have a huge impact on their general fund, and it may not be worth it to go to a fire district from a fire department. I can't envision that being true, but we'll wait and see what their report says. The other thing that I asked the economic people to do is for the 3 cities, what would happen if we imposed a $10 per month utility fee for police and fire? That would raise approximately $750,000 annually, which would be a big help in paying the extra $1 million or so we're gonna be probably paying next year for fire and police. Now, that probably would go up if the council approved it, because that's just a $10 for each account, each utility account. However, some of those utility accounts are for a 100-unit apartment complex, because it's just per account. Well, you know, a lot of cities would actually say, well, let's just do ERU, and which means is your single-family home has a 1 ERU, which stands for equivalent residential unit. It's kind of a standard mechanism how we calculate, you know, sewer rates and SDCs and stuff. An apartment complex has I think a 0.67, you know, 2/3, because apartments usually have fewer people living in them, they use less water, less sewer, things like that. Amazon may be at a 0.5, restaurants are like a 0.4, things like that. So it adjusts the utility fee for ERU, and we would probably collect well over $1 million. Because an apartment complex and Amazon would be paying more than just, because if Amazon gets one bill down there for the 2,500 employees that work 24/7, that would not be fair for Twyla getting a $10 bill also. So it would be adjusted. So the minimum would be $750,000 a year, probably upwards of what would actually happen if the council wanted to do it would be $1 million plus annually. So I just say that to say is that with what's coming down the pike, these increases, regardless of what these settlement negotiations end up at, we're gonna be paying more than we would like, and it could be, you know, upwards of $1 million or slightly more than that. So what staff is now doing is we're looking for the quarters and dimes and pennies in the couch. Where can we give options to the council for revenue enhancement? Isn't that another way of saying people pay more? But we have to look at it. Most cities in Oregon have to do this process, because as you understand, Measure 5 and 50 passed in 1995, may have seemed fine back then, but the accumulating impact of that on cities is we are being reduced in our ability to provide services. It's been taken 30 years, but it's been really critical now. It just gets worse a little bit every year. You know, death by 1,000 cuts, that's what Measure 5 and 50 have done for cities. And so that's why local option levies, utility fees are just a couple of the most common ways that Oregon cities have done to try to close that gap. So anyway, so talking about fire, that's where we're at, that's our approach. That's where we're at now. And I just added this bonus in terms of the compression, which will develop a fire district, and also let you know that we're gonna have to look at revenue enhancements, and I'm thinking sometime maybe February or 1st of March, because I'll just tell you now, Tammy, those of you on budget committee, we're gonna put in the budget the suggestion of a utility fee. Just so it'll be in the budget and the council will have to approve it. But we've got to get that on the table soon so people can talk about it. So I'm thinking maybe in the first meeting in March, council will at least have a work session or a discussion on those issues. Our revenue enhancement suggestions. Revenue enhancements also include, like right now, we're putting into process of doing paid parking down at Glen Otto Park. Glen Otto is a regional park that less than half of the attendees are from the city of Troutdale. A lot of people park there and go do other things. So we're looking at metro, state parks, they all charge you a daily rate for coming in there. So we're looking at doing the same thing. May not be much more than $10,000, $20,000 a year, but it's something. So we have got a whole list of stuff we're doing. I don't need to go over it now, but continue to work on that. Because as I tell people, staff's job is to identify problems, identify solutions, present all that stuff to council, budget committee, and then you guys get to decide because you live here.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
Yes, Rich.
Well, so I'm an engineer, I look for patterns, and it might be easier if you just tell me. On Exhibit A, it's not based on per capita, it's not based on structure, number of structures and type of structure. It's
You're
not
talking
based,
about the fire?
um,
Oh, not this one, the,
fire.
Proposal one.
oh yeah, Exhibit A on the fire, okay, yeah.
So it's not based on number of structures, type of a structure, it's not based on land area. What, the numbers between the cities, how is that divided out? What's
If you
the
see
logic?
in the bottom right of the chart, that is the assessed value of all property within those cities. Troutdale is slightly over $2 billion worth of property, tax assessed value, that's taxable value. And so that was multiplied against the 0.59, which is the amount of Gresham's levy that is going toward fire. But the Gresham citizens are paying an extra 0.59 against their assessed value, which is obviously a lot more than ours versus Gresham's assessed value. Oh, Gresham is over almost $11 billion in assessed value. So that's how the numbers in the bottom left. So essentially it says Troutdale should be paying next year, what does it say, a little over that $2 billion number times 0.58 gets a number, which if you look up above is, okay. If you look at the top chart, I'll say there's a top chart and there's a bottom left and a bottom right. Let me give direction like that.
Yeah,
In the upper right, in the upper chart, it shows in 2020, 23, 24, or 24, 25, that's the number we're paying now, which is, the number we're paying now is based upon the base rate set in 2015, which has been adjusted for inflation every year between 2 and 4.5%, depending on what inflation did that year. So currently that's the base rate up to if we were paying, that's the equivalent of what we were paying in 2015. Well, recently, since that time, the Gresham residents have added 0.59 or whatever it is to the fire department that citizens of Troutdale have not. So we took that number and it works out to that if citizens of Troutdale were paying 0.59 extra per thousand on their taxes, the citizens of Troutdale would be paying approximately $1.5 million more per year. If you look at that top chart, that's the difference between the 2794, 24, 25 number and the 2728 number. And so we're saying, no, there's no way that we can go from 2.8 million to 4.3 million in 1 year. Not happening, because we're not going to pay the same amount as Gresham residents. That's not reasonable, that's not fair, that's ridiculous. So we took that number and then backed it off and added 50%, or 1/3 the first year, 1/3 the second year, and then added the last 1/3, so that we get up to the number they wanted, but it's going to take us 3 years to get there. But with inflation, it means we're still paying less than Gresham residents. So we're at least in that same relative capacity, paying less.
What, if we're talking about paying less for that, why are we assuming that we're gonna pay the same 0.59 as Gresham? Why don't we just still do the 75% of that to go right in line with what we're saying?
I thought of that too. The other two cities would rather went this way because it would, you have to also come up, that works too. I agreed with you but we have to come up with a way that might make sense to their council. They're thinking, we're all paying more. Why isn't Troutdale Village of Fairview paying more? Why aren't their citizens directly paying more? So we thought, all right, let's take our base rate and just equate it to the exact same amount that the Gresham citizens are paying more, and add that to them.
I'd be fine to do that. I think my only hang up I have is like, what are they giving us? What are they giving us? More, new, improved?
So in 3
What are they
years-
committing by doing this, by saying that, what are they committing to us? Like, that would be my question. Are they gonna improve the fire station here? Are they gonna add another crew? Are they going to make our times less than 45 seconds longer than their own in Gresham?
No, because our response times are not based on the fire department and how they operate. It's based on where the fire stations are.
Right, so what are they doing with this extra money for that, you know what I mean, that like gives us something that we,
The extra money is gonna go back into the city of Gresham. We're not gonna get an updated station, not gonna get an
No.
updated fire engine.
Until
We're
this,
not gonna get any investment into the city of Troutdale.
no
All it
investment.
is paying for the city of Gresham to enhance their equipment and their stations, and, yeah.
Yeah, if we did this chart, by the time the third year comes around, we would be paying approximately 88% of what a Gresham resident pays. Higher than historically what we paid, but still a break on it, based upon the reasons that we've already talked about.
Have we approached them with trying to get a commitment with them that in 3 years we're gonna pay 4.3? What are you guys committing to us as far as updates in the station, the equipment, manpower? Have we said, what more are we gonna get? Have we talked to them?
No, they'll say you're gonna get the same service that is paid for with the citizens here, pretty much. Now, I have had discussions with Fire District 10, who owns our station, and they are looking to spend their own money, because they own it, and so they may be putting their $1 million into it to upgrade the building. They got the call because, hey, if we went and upgraded the Troutdale station, would you guys give us breaks on permit fees? I said, well, we can talk about it, I mean, because we're benefiting from it, and so we might be
But
able
can't we point out to the city of Gresham and say, you bought this new truck, you bought this new engine, you bought this new equipment here? When is our turn?
Well,
If we're
I don't know
going
that
to
it
pay.
hasn't been. I don't know what the age of the trucks in the Troutdale station are. We may already be getting new stuff up there. I know recently they had a problem with,
Like hand-me-down. It's like.
I don't know.
Recycled after the other ones go.
do they? I don't know. I should go up to them tour and feel the engine, see how one of those running. Yeah, but that's a good question.
Yeah, if we're going to be strong-armed into paying considerably more, we need to get some teeth into the contract to get something about equipment.
See, because it's only the Troutdale station, because the other station on Halsey, that's theirs anyway.
Right.
So,
But it might be good to go talk to the station captain and ask some questions about equipment and needs and wants and.
Response times.
yeah, the captain of theirs communicates with him about once every month or two. Captain Souls, great guy. He's in favor of fire district, so is the whole union. And I will ask him that question, does he feel, I'm sorry, Carol, I will ask him generally the question, do you feel like you are getting equal to upgrades and services from the fire department as all other stations, or are you the poor stepsister, are you Cinderella?
I just have concerns of paying the same amount when we're smaller than Gresham. Our response time is longer. I have a hard time selling that to our citizens, that, yeah, we're gonna pay the same as Gresham. I just, and being strong-armed, I really struggle with that.
Can
I
it
agree.
be tied to response times and improvement in,
They will
service?
say they can only do so much because they can't make the fire stations any closer and they can't make a new fire station. Most of the surveys that I've seen, the studies they've done, said a fire station needs to be put down somewhere around Wood Village, down below down here. Because since these fire stations were all built, there was no annexed area, there was no Amazon, FedEx, that whole area. There was, all think of all the apartment complexes and houses built in Troutdale over the last, 20 years. So there's been huge increases in need out here, but they've done nothing to add any more stations out here. But that's gonna be, again, that's the other issue we talked about before. Well, who's gonna pay for those stations? Gresham goes, well, it's not in our city, why should we pay for it? It's only to help the other cities. Fire District 10 would go, why should we pay for it? Because it's not within our district anymore. And Troutdale would say, well, we don't control it, why would we pay for a station and give it to Gresham? And so there's, or Wood Village,
A lot of people point there.
this is the problem you get when you don't have a fire district, because
And-
we're
and
covered by somebody else.
You have the catch, you can't spend money outside your district, right?
Yeah, but nobody wants to,
Yeah.
they won't do it.
Carol, did you get a thing said in 1 second? Rich, you have any more?
Oh, no.
Probably should. It's all right, I'm just trying to keep everything in order.
I'm good.
I mean, I don't know, like, it just doesn't,
Doesn't feel good.
No,
it just feels like we're stuck and we don't really have any options unless we get a fire district. And a lot of money needs to be spent to build things to make it better for everybody. But if I read your facial structure, it basically is gonna say, it basically says there's no money for that, and I don't know, I guess in the end, I just kind of feel like we're stuck in a rock and a hard place.
Counselor One, that's something the council's gonna have a long discussion about, how they want to approach this in the short term, these contracts, and short term in terms of additional revenue. But then we can't, again, we can't continue this forever either.
No.
We're gonna have to look for a longer term solution, at least one of these, because if at least you get a longer term solution for one of these in a district, then you remove it from the general fund and you freed up money to deal with the problem you have in the other area, so that at least forestalls the problem.
And
Probably on the Tiberius, where you were talking
Yes.
about 100 and some odd thousand would be the impact of compression.
Yeah.
The impact of compression for out here now is 154,000 presently.
Yes.
Before anything else happens. It's
No,
already-
if there's a fire
No,
district.
no, it's already 154 presently, this year.
I don't know what, they have the numbers here.
Okay.
Oh, I won't go through it now, but you'll get a copy and you can look at it.
And that's before we add in the like, whatever it is, 400 and some odd, 400 million in value this year that goes on the books for TRIP. So that's gonna push you that direction even more. Okay, so like, out of this, in the last 8 years, right? And I know you got inflation and everything, but the cost for brush and fire, what we pay has gone up 50%. That seems pretty significant. But what seems more significant than that is, based on this, in 3 years, our costs are gonna go up 54%.
more or less doubling the rate we were increasing the last 8 years.
So in 11 years, we tripled.
We need more choices, and that's why we keep coming back to a fire district.
And then, of course, the other thing, and I know you know this, Ray, but the response time's less. We don't own any equipment, and yet we're supposed to pay the same. This doesn't make any sense, and why would we expect it to make sense to our citizens?
And our calls have gone down.
Any more information, Ray, are we good?
Oh, yeah, just right now, there's only 116 properties in Troutdale that are under compression. And because of the tax vagaries and stuff, it's actually only costing us about $117 in 2024. Compression in the city of Troutdale.
2025 is when this year will be the
Right, and
154.
if there was a fire district next year, compression would take $63,000 away from our general fund. Yeah, I was looking at the numbers, yeah.
Well, we
It's gonna be, it's small.
Yeah, I'm just saying you got 154 already.
Yeah, approximately 1.3 to 1.5% we'd lose in property tax revenue. You multiply that times the $7 million we get, and versus $2.7 million, so that's why it's. Brush compression is a non-impact in particular fire district. We won't lose any money in our general fund. Enough to worry about.
Rich?
Got a question for Tanny.
Yes, sir.
So it's in my mind, and it relates to all this, right? That we get a pretty sweet deal on our lease for city floor space, right? And you would know best
For
about
what?
how much we pay for leasing floor space for the city, right?
In town here?
In town, yes. We get a pretty sweet deal that's bid under market. That's not gonna last forever.
No, it's under market, and you need a long-term solution, if that's what you're asking me.
Long-term, that's not gonna last forever. At some point, we're gonna have to pay market rates. And that's gonna be a killer for the year-to-year budget for a city. At some point, we're gonna need to build our own city hall. It's just gonna come, right? But the reason why it relates here is compression. If that day comes, what does that do to compression?
You have to ask for more money.
Bond levies for property don't factor into compression, do they? Or is it,
Yeah,
local option levies?
local options,
Oh,
no,
they do.
bonds do.
Okay, bonds do, that's right.
So what you have to do is, in other words, if compression's gonna be, let's say, 10 million, and
Yeah,
you
if
need 50 million, you gotta ask for 60.
If we get up near compression, and we know this future expense is gonna hit us someday, are we taking that into account? Right?
It's hard to take it into account until you're up against it, but you definitely have to go out and ask for more money than what you want, because you know you're not gonna get it.
Right, right. That would be the compression effect.
I would just say it's probably another discussion, but I would think we need a city hall, it's my own personal opinion, desperately. And I think the only way to do that is a lease-to-own option. I don't think you can go out with a bond for that too.
By the way, come to the January 28th council session, we'll be doing a report on another suggestion for a city hall. That's all I'll tell you.
All right, stay on topic,
All
please.
these teasers.
No, I've actually, Bremick sold that lot now. Next to Taste of Village, they sold that and Taste of Village is gutted.
Yeah, for the discussion here, it's just purely the effect on compression and whether we're gonna be bumping up too close to that compression with what we're talking about, to make that a problem.
You'll be in it.
All right, everybody feeling good? I am going to,
So good, yeah.
I'm gonna circle back to number 2, and I'm gonna open for public comment. At this time, we're gonna open for public comment. I don't see anybody in the room, but if there's anybody on Zoom that would like to open up and make public comment, please do so at this time. State your name, city of residence. And I don't see anybody wanting to make public comment, so we're gonna close public comment. Thank you, everybody. Then we can set number 6, set next meeting date.
So the first question is, do Monday evening still work for everybody? You don't have to, but that works.
I know this room was pretty booked up a lot of
Pick
other
one.
days, so.
Yeah, Monday works for me.
Yeah. I mean, our dates then are February 3rd or February 10th?
Go to 10.
He likes the 10th?
It doesn't matter to me.
That's true. Make it at midnight on the 10th, right? You don't care.
Yeah, kick to the curb.
I guess that's going once, going twice. Anybody have any
All right,
comments?
let's look around. February 10th work for you?
Okay.
Rich?
Yes.
I think
Your
I'm
wife
fine.
said it works for you? All right, 10th it is.
All right.
Brings us to number 7. If anybody wants to make a motion.
This is Carol, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Victoria seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, this meeting was adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.